I've clicked onto the Global Tropical Overview for October the 6th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, the thoughts expressed are mine alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we've got a lot to talk about in the tropics today. We've got Typhoon Koinu still to talk about. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We've got Invest 98W, which could threaten the Mariana Islands, particularly the southern side of them in Guam and areas surrounding that later next week. And we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Lidia, as it could threaten Mexico next week as well. But I'm going to leave timestamps so you can skip to whatever storm you want, but I'm going to start off with Koinu. And Koinu has been very impressive to watch over the past day. If you remember the last time I made a video, it was coming into southern Taiwan as a large and powerful typhoon. I think it was a Category 4 when it came into Taiwan. Now it's a very different storm. In fact, you almost consider it being if you weren't watching it all too closely, you'd think, did this storm just form and come out of nowhere? Because this storm is now completely small. It's gone from a large tropical cyclone back towards a very small cyclone after the interaction with Taiwan. Very fascinating to see these interactions with these high topography islands, but this is just one of the amazing cases of a storm interacting with Taiwan. But you can see the very small structure and very, very close call here for the coastline of China, especially near and east of Hong Kong. We likely just avoided what could have been a Category 4 typhoon equivalent coming in there with winds of maybe 115 knots, or that's 130 miles per hour. Very, very impressive storm, to say the very least. Now, the good news is this system is not forecast to come really into the coastline of China as a strong storm. The expectation unanimously from model guidance has continuously been that this system will weaken. And the main factor is just slow movement in this region. The sea surface temperatures are very warm, but the sea surface temperatures, while being warm, are not very deep. And this system, you can see, is not moving too much. It's not moving too fast at all. And because of its strong nature being a Category 4 equivalent, this system is now likely beginning to upwell some of those cooler waters from beneath the surface. Now, this is a microwave pass we got not too long ago. This was earlier this morning in UTC. This would have been last night local time, but you can see the very, very strong inner core. I had to zoom in quite a bit here because it's so small, and you can see the very intense thunderstorms around that. Now, we are seeing signs that the system might be beginning to come off of its peak. The northern side of the eye wall has continuously been a little bit weaker, but alongside that, you can see the eye on infrared is now becoming much more asymmetric, and it seems to be becoming cloud-filled at this time. That it looks to be an indication of the system might be struggling now, likely due to some starting upwelling. I can show you the HAFS model on this. Like I said, warm sea surface temperatures here, but they're not warm with great depth, and you can see on the HAFS model, if you pay very close attention, I'll zoom in here a little bit, you can see that starting, this is tonight, or sorry, this is tonight UTC. This would be this morning local time, and you can see already the upwelling beginning here with sea surface temperatures below it on the model being now below the general threshold of 26 degrees Celsius. And that continues, and you can see it get very cold underneath the storm, and it rapidly weakens on the way to the coastline. Now, the exact intensity of how much it weakens really does depend or dictate rather exactly if this system comes ashore or if it stays offshore. The steering pattern is very different with height, and I'm going to show you this if I go here to the beginning of this run from the HAFS model. I know this is a lot, but pay attention mainly to this chart here on the top left. What this is showing is this is showing winds with height throughout the troposphere. This is basically you're taking a cross section of the storm through the troposphere, and you're looking at it on a 2D graph. That's basically what we're looking at here. And you can see right now with the very strong storm, you naturally have thunderstorm activity going all the way up into the higher end of the troposphere, all the way up through the 200 millibar level. And as we go throughout the next day, you'll notice that as the system weakens on the model, all of the thunderstorms start to come down a little bit. They're still pretty high up. You can see that we've still got pretty significant winds up, by the 300 millibar level. But what this does, especially by day one, this is 24 hours out on the model, you can see now most of the significant winds are below the 400 millibar level, and that's very important because if we look at the sounding that I show for just a second there, you can see the winds are much different. The steering is very different with height. If you have the stronger storm, like the HAFS model had, it's going to feel a lot more of this flow up here, and it's going to be feeling this flow pushing it towards the coastline more. But if it weakens like it does here and comes down, you can see it starts to feel more of the low level flow rather than the upper level flow. You can see this low level flow is actually more carrying the system west, maybe a bit south of due west. And you can see on the HAFS model that as the system weakens substantially, it barely comes towards the coastline, and then it starts drifting southwest as it starts to really feel that low level flow and weakens considerably. And that's really the main thing to watch for. Now, we've had some diverging model guidance on this idea of exactly how much it will weaken. The HAFS model is similar to the HWRF, to where it shows significant weakening to landfall. The HWRF is a little bit stronger, but that seems to be an outlier right now. The general consensus is that if this system does come into the coastline of China, it will likely be tropical storm, maybe at the highest end a typhoon when it comes in. This is not going to be a Category 4 coming in, fortunately, to the coastline. We have certainly gotten very lucky here that the steering currents have kept this system away from the coastline. But that could still bring some strong winds of tropical storm force, again, potentially typhoon force, and could bring some onshore flow that could lead to some higher water levels along the coastline. This is a Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast, and you can see what I generally talked about there, that general weakening trend here, and this coming southwest as it weakens like it did on the HAFS model. Though, of course, keep in mind, this system could still come very close to the coastline, and that could still bring some significant impacts there. So make sure you stay tuned to the local weather offices there for the latest information. All right, that's Typhoon Koinu. We're going to stay in the West Pacific for a little bit longer as we have Invest 98W here east of the Mariana Islands. It's been a bit since we had to come out here and talk about a storm, but this system is developing pretty well. Some could argue that it's actually getting very close to being a tropical cyclone. And this system over the next coming days is going to track generally northwest, and it will likely bring some impacts to the Mariana Islands as the conditions will favor some intensification. Now, if we look at the close-up visible or infrared loop, since it's nighttime there, you can see we have the general sense of an area of low pressure here on the western end of most of this disorganized convective activity. And this is well east of the Mariana Islands. I can show you this big view again. It's pretty far east of you right now. Now, the good news is the environment is not overly favorable for rapid intensification on approach to the coastlines of these islands, but there may still be some intensification. Sea surface temperatures are good. You can see it's very much surrounded by 30 degrees Celsius waters, and in general, shear is not going to be overwhelming for this storm. Now, this is an ASCAP pass, and this can get a little bit subjective onto whatever you call a tropical cyclone or not. Right now, it seems pretty close. It has an area of low pressure that appears to be closed from this ASCAP pass, though the winds on the southern and eastern sides are not overly strong. But the convection, I'm not sure if it's organized enough. If it gets more organized over the center, then I can see the call of making it a tropical cyclone. But either way, whatever it is now, it is likely to become one in fairly short order. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center gives this a high chance of development in the next day, and that seems about right. Now, in terms of the environment, this is a 200 millibar flow from the GFS. You can see the diverging flow aloft right now over the system, and this will help the system in its development phases. Now, as we go towards the Mariana Island interaction of the storm, you can see that there's still some divergence here, and that could aid the system in intensifying a little bit, but you can see there is also some stronger winds aloft. and this may cause some shear. This is a sounding from the GFS showing that. You can see some of the stronger winds aloft, and there is also a little bit of a wind shift from the low levels to the mid to upper levels, and that itself causes some shear. You can see shear of about 23 knots there on the model. Now, not overwhelming per se, but it certainly is not going to, be the most favorable for a rapid intensification event. We're not looking at the storm exploding before it gets to the islands. I'd say right now you can expect a tropical storm coming through there, maybe a typhoon if it plays its cards right. Now, this is a European model. I'm going to reload this to get the latest frames, and you can see the general same pattern here as the GFS. We've got still some divergence aloft, moving away from the storm, but different. I'm seeing these frames for the first time. The European is actually not showing too much shear relative to the GFS, it looks like here. And if I get a sounding here, if it will come in, it has a little bit less shear. You can see there is still some, about 19 knots, with the stronger winds aloft and the wind shift, but it seems to be playing its cards better here, if you will, on the European, as it is a little bit stronger in the European, and that's maybe the case to where we get a typhoon like I was just talking about in this region. So we do need to pay attention to that. Now, in terms of steering, this system is pretty much certain to come towards the Mariana Islands. Now, there is a bit of uncertainty on exactly how far south or how far north it could get. The European itself has sort of diverged. The last run had it coming through the central Mariana Islands. Now, it seems like this run is coming through a region close to Guam. So there is still a little bit of uncertainty there, and it all depends on the subtropical ridge here north of the system and this trough digging in over Japan. The expectation is that this trough will dig in and this will erode the western end of this ridge. If it happens a little bit earlier, the system could gain a little bit latitude, a little bit earlier, and could get the system to come further north, say like a earlier European run was showing. On the other hand, if the trough is a little bit slower here, doesn't erode the ridge as quickly, this could keep it tracking west as it comes towards the Mariana Islands, and this would keep it from gaining a lot of latitude. And this would actually get it to come towards, say, the southern chain of the islands, say Guam or Tinian and Saipan. Now, after the track through the Mariana Islands, we are expecting the system to recurve because of this trough. You can see here comes a trough here on the model. It's eroded the western end of this bridge. Now this bridge is trying to pull it north, and this trough is trying to pull it north. So now we've got the storm recurving into the open West Pacific. Now there may be some concern here on exactly how far away, or how close rather, this gets to the northern part of the Mariana Island chain. We need to keep an eye on that because this system could have a significant potential to intensify within this region thanks to this trough. And I can show you that here on the 200 millibar flow. You can see as it recurves, we have this very strong jet streak take shape. And this could aid the system with greater outflow, expanding away from the storm, and that could help it intensify, and that could get uncomfortably close to some of these islands, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. But fortunately, this is 7 days out, so there is still room for things to change. But in terms of the Mariana Islands, really the best thing to do right now is just monitor 98W and stay tuned to the local weather office there. I think in Guam, it's the National Weather Service. In fact, they might cover, I think, the entire southern chain. Not exactly sure about the northern end of the chain, but make sure you stay tuned to them and the Japan Meteorological Agency for the latest advisories, as they're going to be initiating these, I'm sure, in the next day or two as the system comes west. All right, we're now going to move to the Eastern Pacific for the first time in a while. We're going to be looking at tropical storm. It is hurricane. I can't remember if it's a hurricane on ATCF or tropical storm. I'm just going to go tropical storm just to be safe. But this is tropical storm Lidia here on the satellite imagery. And this system is sitting offshore of Mexico. I can go to the true color imagery so you can see this general location of the system well offshore. But this system is not forecast to be like other systems this season and just continuously go northwest. The pattern is going to evolve over the next several days, and it will likely allow the system to scoot back up towards the coastline of Mexico, and there is some concern for some impacts there as the system comes north. Now, as it stands right now, the system is very convectively active. You can see a very persistent burst of convection here over and just near the low level center. Now, it's very uncertain right now if this is actually developing anything, if this is organized convection. Given what I'm seeing on the satellite, this doesn't look overly organized. This looks like it might be just more disorganized in general. In fact, I think I'm just noticing on the eastern end, you can sort of see a wave come out of the eastern end of the area of convection. You can sort of see it there. And let me illustrate it there and there. That might be an outflow boundary. Maybe better to see on visible satellite imagery. Maybe not. But I saw that on infrared. Maybe that's something of note for the convection. But overall, I just have some doubts of this convection actually being very organized at all. Mainly because the system is sheared, and this is something typically that you would see in a sheared system. And really, the low-level center is here. It's not directly underneath this convection, so even if it was organized, it's not completely stacked, which can have some issues for development. But either way, the National Hurricane Center still estimates that the system is just below hurricane intensity, which is why I'm a bit confused, or I can't remember, rather, if this is a hurricane or tropical storm on ATCF. But either way, the system will likely weaken from whatever peak it has as it comes northwest. And I wish I could say that the system was going to just go northwest and that would be the end of Lidia, but we still have a pattern, as I mentioned, that is going to evolve to get the system to come towards the coastline of Mexico. So this is a view over North America, just to reorient yourself. This is Lidia down here, and here's the coastline of Mexico. And what we've got is we've got a pretty high amplitude pattern here over the the United States and Canada, and you can see we've got this trough here near Alaska, followed by this ridge over the western United States. This ridge is helping to carry the system northwest, and really is keeping this trough from carrying this system back into Mexico. Now, what's going to happen over the coming days is this trough here by Alaska is going to dig into the western United States, and it's going to force this ridge north. So you'll see over time, here comes that trough, and now this bridge backs north here, and this trough also stays because now this bridge is blocking this trough from moving out of the region. All these things are connected, but you can now see that without this strong ridge here over the western United States, the general flow between these two troughs is going to try and pull the storm back towards the coastline of Mexico. There's also, what you can't see on this map, there's an upper level trough here digging in over Baja California. This is also helping to carry the system generally towards the northeast. Now, going back to the East Pacific map, this is a 200 millibar flow from the GFS, and you can see that upper level trough develop here on the model. You can see this is by Monday morning, and you can see here's our trough, and our storm is now turning towards the coastline of Mexico. Now, this is where the intensity forecast gets very sensitive. There is possibilities here of exactly how the system tracks and how it tracks relative to this large jet streak associated with this upper level trough. There's possibilities here that the system could intensify significantly, being aided by this trough interaction. Now, the main issue with this is these interactions can be very fragile. If you look at the European, as it goes towards the trough interaction, and I'll go, what frame was I on? I'll go to Tuesday morning, late Monday night. You can see the position of the storm relative to this jet streak is a little bit more unfavorable on the European. You can see on the GFS, we've got this pretty easy channel going right into the entrance region of this jet streak. But on the European, you don't have that. You still have, somewhat of an entrance region, but the overall positioning with the storm relative to this trough, or this jet streak rather, is not great. And because of that, we have a significant divergence of solutions here on the European. Now I'm going to go to the 12C run, because this is the latest run, see if it's differed a little bit. And you can see it tries to intensify it a little bit as it gets towards the coastline. Now, importantly, with the 12Z run, something I noticed, there's another area of interest off the coastline of Mexico. It actually does have this interact with Lidia as it comes towards the coastline. That in of itself could have some implications for track, maybe intensity as well. But if we go back to the 0Z run, you can see that the trough interaction was really not that great, and we really didn't get too much intensification here before landfall. But on the GFS's end, we actually got very significant intensification, and you can see a very strong hurricane racing towards the coastline. So this is a very sensitive forecast, and really there's a lot of factors that I mentioned. Really the main factors that we need to watch for, and I'm sure the National Hurricane Center is going to be watching these for their forecast, is exactly where is a storm forecast to be relative to this trough interaction. Alongside that, how is the system, off the coastline of Mexico? I believe it's Invest 98, or sorry, 990 here. How do the remnants of that potentially impact Lidia as it comes north? Does it come into Mexico and bury itself there and dissipate away? Or could it potentially take a route to where maybe some of the remnant energy continuously comes westwards and starts to interact with Lidia? That's some of the questions here that we need answered. And fortunately, we have at least 5 to 6 days to figure that out. Now you can see right now the intensity guidance is on the lower end of things, all things considered, from the trough interaction. And this is really our hope, that the trough interaction is not as favorable as, say the GFS shows, and we have a weaker storm coming in here. But of course, remember, even if you have a weaker storm, even if it's a tropical storm coming in, with the high topography here, an onshore flow into that, you could easily get some significant rainfall coming into the region in a very short period of time. Now, this is the National Hurricane Center forecast cone. You can see it's generally taking the track that I outlined there with the pattern over North America. You can see becoming a hurricane over the next day or so, and then weakening, and then coming back towards the coastline of Mexico. And of course, as I said, keep in mind, there's a lot of uncertainty with this intensity forecast. This is going to be one of the more sensitive intensity forecasts to deal with here as it comes towards the coastline of Mexico. But of course, stay tuned to the National Hurricane Center. They're going to have the latest advisories out for Lidia, and they're of course going to have the best forecasts out there. And stay tuned to your local weather office there. I'll leave links to all the local weather offices and official tropical cyclone warning centers in the description, like I typically do in these videos. But that was a long video, and that's all I've got to talk about today. The tropics are very active. In the Pacific, the Atlantic is finally quieting down for a little bit. Felipe is now post-tropical, so that's why we didn't really talk about it today. But stay safe in all the areas mentioned here today that's going to be impacted by the tropical cyclones. I'll have future videos throughout the weekend and into next week. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.